It was 1993. The mayor said that this space is open and asked people to make proposals as to what to put in this space. A variety of women's groups, including one group that I was involved with, the Boston Women's Heritage Trail, as well as the Women's Commission, the Neighborhood Association of Back Bay, the mayor's office, etc., got together and said, we need to depict women, because since the beginning of when statuary started becoming popular in Boston in the 1850s and 60s, men had always been depicted. And there were only two examples of public art in which women were depicted, and that was in front of the State House. One was Anne Hutchinson, who was banished. One was Mary Dyer, who was hanged. So it's like, okay. And so it was time for other women. So it was agreed that there would be a women's memorial here, and they said yes. What's interesting here is the competition for this was won by a New York artist named Meredith Gang Bergman. And again, people submitted a variety of models. Hers was chosen. Now, when you think of statues of great heroes, where are they located? What do they look like? What do they feel like? Okay, we have the orators, we have the people on the horses with one leg up and two legs up, whatever, and they're tall and big and inaccessible because I want to be like George Washington, okay? What's different here? They're right here, okay? What is amazing, gang, is to see little kids, little boys and girls come here and hold her pen, write, touch her face, to regularly see little kids come here and be touching the words, touching the people, coming over and holding the pens of these people. And, you know, this is so different than George Washington. Looking up, maybe I can be him. Oh, I really can't. He's bigger and taller than me. How can I do this? And this is like the ducklings, okay? This is real, get real. I can be one of these people. I can do this, okay? Now, the problem with being on a pedestal is you can't get stuff done when you're on a pedestal, okay? And so Meredith Bergman decided to break from tradition. She took the women off their pedestals and has them working on them. They are writing on them. They are leaning on them determinedly with their famous quotes next to them. So it is my very, very favorite part about this. In each case of the women decided, the woman is doing something that is very much like her. The images are based on photos, portraits, drawings of the three women depicted, and they all have words by these people. The various people depicted, probably the one you know the best, Abigail Adams. There is a legitimate argument that John Adams wouldn't have been the man that he was without Abigail Adams. I think the same could be true of FDR. Okay? Anyway, she wrote to him regularly. We have their correspondence. What's amazing is in the Mass Historical Society, they have all their letters. You know, you can get them online. You can just go online and look at them, but they have the actual letters there. And so she had this amazing correspondence that gave him thought and conscience and gave him trouble too. Now, what is the famous line that she wrote to John? Remember the ladies. Someone this morning said, don't forget the ladies, and that's fine too. That's good, okay? The context of that, though, you've got to read the whole thing. It is wonderful. So he's down there. They're working on the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. Phillis Wheatley, who was she? Poet, author. What was unusual? Slave, yeah, that was unusual. Okay, she came over in the period just before the American Revolution. She came from West Africa. We don't really know where she was from, what tribe she was from. She was with a group of people who came on a slave ship. She came into Boston Harbor. We had slaves here, guys, okay? The progressive Bostonians, we had slaves. They were generally house servants, and there were generally a small number of them. But we did have slaves, and we did not eliminate slavery until 1783. And in 1790, we were the first state reporting no slaves, okay? But she came over, was bought by the Wheatley family. The name of the boat she came on was the Phillis. That's how she got her name. Now, she couldn't speak the language, but there were two kids in the Wheatley family, and they were studying. And they would come home and bring their books home, and she would come over and want to learn what they were doing. And they really liked her, and so she was doing what she was supposed to be doing and helping around the house, whatever. But she was also learning to read, to write, foreign languages, math, science, geography, all this. She was brilliant, okay? It broke every stereotype that there was. okay, because there was this belief, and this is the same thing 100 years earlier, the same kind of doubt about the abilities of African Americans they had during the Civil War. Like, can they fight? Can they be as good soldiers as white men? By 1773, before the American Revolution broke out, she had published her first book, which was a book of poems. And she became very famous. She became the first published African American poet in America, Phillis Wheatley. Who is Lucy Stone? She was an advocate of women's rights. She fought for women's suffrage. She did not live to see women's suffrage. When did women get the vote in the United States? 1920, okay? She didn't live for that. However, she had in a very important newspaper called the Women's Journal, many of the important women of the time, including Julia Ward Howe, who we remember for Battle Hymn of the Republic, and other strong women. Boston was filled with strong independent women in the wake of the Civil War, wrote for her, men, women alike. She married a guy named Henry Blackwell, and they had this weird agreement in their marriage that they were equal. You know how bizarre that is for that time of, we're talking after the Civil War. She also made an agreement with him that she was not going to change her name, that she was going to keep her own. And so women in that period, in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, who kept their own name when they got married were called Lucy Stoners or Stoners. So these are our three women. This is the new wave of what sculpture is all about. I've never seen so many kids climb over and be inspired by so many women.